So basically today I'm going to do a few different things. I'm going to show everyone how the rear end goes together, how the front end goes together, and then basic how to install the seat. And then when I get the front end together, I'll go ahead and set the toe, show everybody how that's done, and a couple different ways to go about it. First, so basically when you guys get your chassis, I'm sure some people have unboxed them. So it's going to be bag parts, right? Stuff everywhere. What I like to do is lay everything out, that we know where everything goes. And then inside bags, we'll have mini bags. So first, bearing inside the cassette. It's going to go, so you're going to have your cassette and then your bearing, and there's two little slots. And one's going to go inwards on each end of the chassis, and then you want your bolt facing to the back. So, for instance, this one, stick it in sideways, and you spin it. On the other side, we've already done the same. Like so. Now on your chassis, there's 3 holes on each slot. That basically gives you your ride height. So the higher the frame is, the more grip the chassis is going to give you. We always start right in the middle. So of the 3 holes, you want to stick your bolts right in the center. Like so. Same on this side, right in the middle hole. All this stuff, it's very crucial that you don't just impact it on, because you can mess a lot of stuff with that. So I like to put it all in by hand, and then just take a wrench after I'm done.
While you're doing that, how long do you think it would take to put the whole chassis together?
For me, like 2 hours. Obviously, the first time you guys do it, it's going to take a while. Just to figure it all out. And then these are 13mm wrench.
So you don't have to torque them down to any specific?
No. Well, there's nothing really on this chassis that would utilize a torque wrench. Okay, so now that I got my 2 bearings in, my 2 cassettes in, next I want to basically align the axle with the bearings. And by doing that, start on the right side. You want to make sure you get, so on your axle, there's a set of keyway holes on the right side of the axle that goes to the right side of the chassis. So it's, you can't just stick it in either way. You can only go in one way. So this one I did last night, so it's already lined up, but normally they wouldn't be lined up. It would be off to one side, so you're going to want to just bend it inside here, move the bearing, and once I have it in, I like to take a rubber mallet and just tap on these bolts right down here. Basically, that just loosens the bearing up inside the cassette and aligns everything up. When you go together, you want it to be that easy. Next, we're going to stick the caliper bracket on.
You say it does matter which way the bolts are facing on the cassette? The commons?
These ones?
No.
Oh,
No,
these
these
ones.
ones.
Yeah,
Yeah, you want the head to be facing the back. When you stick your bracket on, your bolt's going to go that way, out. And then there's going to be a little spacer that goes in between the bracket and the cassette. Like this, put it in my hand. Next, you're going to take your brake caliper, and it bolts to this by splitting these two halves. Remove these two 10mm bolts. Be careful when you do this because these spacers will fall out. It goes like so. Set the spacers back on. Stick the other half. And in one of the other baggies, whenever you do get done, there's a bunch of safety clips, and 2 safety clips will go on these bolts. So just pretend we tighten that up for a minute right now. Okay, so once we have that done, next we're going to take the axle back out and then install the brake rotor. So to do that, you just got to slide it that far. Stick the rotor in between the pads, and then come back through with it. Now you're going to find your bag of keyways. And in the keyway bag there's also the set screws which go into the bearings once you're all done and centered up, lock everything down. So you're going to find on the left side of the axle there's a set of keyway holes on the far end, and then one towards the middle. The middle one is for the brake rotor, so you can stick your keyway down in there, and then align the keyway up with the rotor slot, and then slide it in. Next, now you're ready to square the axle up, left to right. So the best way to do that is I measure from the bearing to the outside of the axle, and you want it to be equal side to side. So right now it's 7 inches and 8 3/8. So we got to keep going over. Quarter. Too much that way. Let's go back this way a little bit. So now square side to side, and it's actually the measurement is 7 5/8 from the bearing to the outside of the axle. They require a 4mm Allen wrench. Then you're just gonna screw them in.
You put those in all 3 holes or just 2?
All 3.
Yeah. That way it's just
So I didn't really tighten these down too tight, but when you guys go to put yours together, they want to be pretty tight. And this is also an item that you want to check often because they will loosen up. So, you know, every couple sessions out on track, just put a wrench on them and make sure they're not loose. Once that's tight, you want to center your rotor up, and that is all done just by eyeball. Then you need a 5mm Allen wrench. Tighten these. And there's also a 3mm Allen wrench screw on the opposite side that it acts as like a safety, and it goes down to a keyway. And that doesn't have to be too tight, otherwise you will strip that. So now we have that on, we're going to go next and do our sprocket carrier. And it's going to go in the slot of keyways on the right side of the axle. And then for now we just leave it loose, obviously, because we don't have an engine on to align it yet. And then lastly, we do hubs. And they go on outsides. Basically, these is what you set your rear track width with. So if you want, let's say they're all the way in, and then you put your wheels on and you measure at 54 inches and you want to run 55 inches, you simply loosen these bolts up and slide each hub out equal distance to get your optimum max width. We normally run in between 54 and a half and 55 inches total. So all the way in, you should be about 54 inches. So you're looking at, you know, a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch per side. You're going to want to move out and then lock these down. And also, you know, if you're at 55 inches and your cart's too loose, it's a good tuning method. You slide your hubs in, tightens the cart up, same way. If you're 54 inches and you want to go free it up, it's too tight, slide it out to 55 inches.
You want to do that equal on both sides?
Yeah, you want to make sure. No, you want to make sure. Well,
for right now.
no, 99% of the time, yes, because most tracks have equal lefts to rights. Very few we go to a track where it's, you know, majority of one-sided. So that's the rear. Now I'll go ahead and start on the front now.
What's the hole that's not being utilized?
This?
No, on the right there.
This?
Yeah.
So it's just they make different hubs. If you want to run like super narrow, you can run this position. And then, but like this one has a lock on it, it will only go in so far anyways. Like that, bottoms out. Any other questions on the rear?
Yeah, I know I've asked a lot, but The rotor.
Yep.
Should it be run almost exactly parallel? Because I noticed.
Yeah, they'll have a low wobble.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a manufacturing thing.
So just as long as it's not touching the pad.
Yeah, you just don't want it dragging. Anything else?
You said you need to tighten those set screws when you're set onto the...
These?
No.
These?
Yeah.
Oh, these right here.
Yeah. You have to hold those in place and check them every now and then. Is there any reason why you could do some thread tight or anything on those?
Yeah, we use Loctite, but you'll notice that. So basically, this axle acts as like a torsion bar, and as you run it, it'll get really hot just from the heat. You know, the heat transfer going through it. So even when we use Loctite, the Loctite heats up, reactivates. But yeah, Loctite's not a bad idea. A lot of people use Loctite.
Blue Loctite.
Blue Loctite. Don't use any red or green. Just blue. If you want to use Loctite. So yeah, go to the front now. On the front. Okay, so you're going to find a bag in your box, set up like this. It's got the fills and the spacers and kingpins already built together in a bag. They're not sided, so left, right, it doesn't matter. Next, you want to find your spindles. These do matter side to side. You'll find little dots on top of the spindles. The dot you want to point up. So make sure if you see a dot and it's pointing up, it goes on the left, don't put it on the right side. So on these, you'll find on your pills, the pills are the same top and bottom, but there's 3 different spacers. And the way you want to set it up is you want it to go you want the smaller in the middle, medium-sized spacer on top of the spindle. So you're going to slide those through, and then you're going to take your spindle, put it in between there, get it started, have your bottom pill sitting on the chassis. It likes to fall out though. Okay. And lastly, like that. Just slide this in between, and then stick your toe back in. It's very important, like when you're setting this up, if something's not going together right, there's probably a reason. You shouldn't have to hammer anything, force it. It should all go together like that. We're going to do the same thing to the right side. Take your small and your medium spacer. Large spacer is going to go at the bottom, same as the other side.
Yep, put any lube on it?
No, the only lube you'll ever use is going to be in between this and your hub when you're going to pick it up on. Same on the axle, you'll spray in the axle bearing. But in between the kingpin and the spindle bolts, tighten this up. It's going to be a 6mm Allen wrench, 13mm wrench. Now our spindles are on. We're going to move. Get the steering shaft installed. So you guys take it out of the box. It's going to look like this. Everything's going to be basically pre-assembled. There's a little top hat that's going to go. So you're going to take all this off and then slide it down through here. Then you're going to take your washer, and then top hat, and then nut, like so. The top hat is going to be pointing downwards, or upwards, I guess, going into the steering shaft. Started. Okay. Then all these bolts on your steering stuff are all going to have little, at the end of the bolts are going to be turned down, and they're all going to get safety clips. So these bolts will get safety clips, this will get safety clips, all your tie rod bolts will get safety clips. Basically anything steering related will have a safety clip bolt on it. So when you go to install this, there's many options you can choose. Simply pick whichever one whoever's going to drive it likes. You know, if they need it to be lower, put in a lower position. If they're a taller person, raise it up. So all this is simply preference.
So that's not going to affect anything tuning wise on your.
No. So all these positions are simply preference on where you like the wheel. If you like it more in your lap, like it higher, if your knees are hitting, you know, if you can't see over the wheel, something like that. So we're just going to put that on loose for now. But when if we're assembling this, we're actually going to want to take our, I don't have it out yet, but the Nassau panel brackets come out and bend like this, and they're going to go between this bolt before you tighten it down. Next, we're going to find another bag that has 4 bolts in it like this, with concave washers. These are for your tie rods. Tie rods out. And then basically what I like to do is when assembling is spin your tie rod all the way in on every side. Okay, and these tie rods, same sides, they're not sided or anything, lefts or right, rights or left. Same with the bolts. 4 bolts, they're all the same. When you go to put them together though, you want, so there's going to be a big gold washer, a nut, a bolt, and then a very, very thin washer. You want that thin washer to stay right next to the concave. And then you're going to go tie rod, prime joint, and gold washer on bottom, and then it's going to go. So on your spindle, there's 3 holes. You're always going to want to use the middle hole right here in the center. And then on your steering shaft, there's 2 positions, high position and low position. That basically determines if you want it to steer fast or slow. So it changes your Ackerman. We always run at the bottom. Again, it's a preference thing. It's one of those things when you guys are out practicing one day, start at one position and then come in, change it, and have the guy or the driver go back out and see which one they like. It's not so much a performance thing as it is a, if the driver likes a slow steering or a fast steering on the chassis. So, but we always recommend starting in the bottom position of the 2 holes.
The bottom position is slow.
Yes. Let's do the same thing for the other side. Okay, when you go to tighten these bolts up, take a 5mm Allen wrench and a 13mm wrench.
I didn't notice what those nylon nuts.
Yeah, they're nylon lock nuts. And these bolts are the same as the others. They have little, basically turn down on the ends of them, all for safety clips. Okay. And then next, once you get this where you want it, you can set this, basically slide it up into it. Don't put any pressure on it. And it takes a 3mm Allen wrench to lock it down. It's more of just a safety ring thing in case this ever pops out. You'll still be able to steer it. It won't just pull out.
There should be pressure on that?
No, you don't want to put any pressure on it. Just bring it right up to it and then lock it down. Just a snug. If you put too much pressure on it, the steering wheel won't want to turn. And obviously, if it's not far enough up, if something ever happens, it's not going to be doing anything for you. Okay, so real quick, I'm going to show everyone how to set the front end. Here we use these. There's many methods to do it. We use our lasers on these. Basically what we do is we try to get it straight. Obviously you guys are going to have your steering wheel already on when you get to this point. So you kind of just want to eyeball the top of the steering wheel, make sure it looks level. And then simply So basically when we set up our toe, we like to have 2 millimeter toe out total per side. So one per side. And on the lasers, it's 1 dot. So one box is 2 millimeters, 1 dot is 1 millimeter. But again, there's many ways to do this. You can use lasers, you can use toe plates. A lot of schools last year were basically, you can take this and just get, any sort of round, flat plate, have 3 holes drilled out in it, and then just use that. And I can show everybody that method too a little bit. But for us here, it's a lot faster to use this method.
Instead of those lasers cost.
298, I think. It was for a time savings, like you can do toe in a matter of minutes, probably almost quicker than you can hold the plates on and get everything. Sure.
So right now I'm one and one per side, and now I want to check my swing. Basically, the swing is to make sure that when it turns, each wheel turns at the same rate. If your swing's off, one wheel is going to turn faster, the other is going to turn slower, and it's almost going to drag the tire across the pavement. So by checking that, simply, we use the lasers like this, and we hold this on the steering shaft, and we turn it, and you'll see the way the steering's set up is it's going to go a certain direction, and then it's going to start actually coming back the other direction if you go too far. And you want to record what the furthest distance is. So for right here on my tape ruler, it's 225 on my ruler. And you want to do the same thing for the other side. So right now, almost 245 almost. So I'm way off. So what you want to do is, it's roughly 20 mil off, so basically you want to add 10 mil to one side and take 10 mil away from the other side. So on my long side, I'm going to screw it until it's 235. And on the short side, I'm going to add length to it. So get it to 235. As you can see right now, my toe is perfect, one per side. And now my swing, I'll check one more time, but it's going to be perfect. 35. So now my toe's good per side and my swing's perfect per side. So now when I turn it, the rate is the same, both left and right direction. Versus before, when one side was long, it would turn, and you would notice it on track. If your swing's not right, it's going to turn better right, or it's going to turn better left. In the other direction, it's going to have to push. So swing's very, very crucial to get it right. It's just as important as a toe.
So you adjust the swing with the tie rods?
Yes.
And also the toe with the tie rods?
Yep.
So how does that not throw one another off?
So basically,
Or you just
because I added length to one side, so if I take length away on the right side, I'm adding it to the left
So
side.
once you get one set, if you need to change the other, you should be okay, or no, as long as you're doing it equal on both
Yeah, you
sides?
want to do equal. So if you do on the right side, wherever you add, you want to take away on the left. Or if you take away on the right, add to the left. That way you keep your toe the same.
So in a car, what you're doing is centering your steering. Essentially.
Essentially, yes. Sometimes,
In automotive terms.
yeah, basically, you're making everything run square. Okay. So then, once you have that done, you simply spin your nuts. onto the actual tie rod. It's going to require a 13 and a 10. And the 10 millimeter actually slides onto the tie rod, and the 13 is used on the heim joint. And you're going to tighten the heim joint nuts. Okay. You always want to make sure that when you do tighten them, so if you're going to tighten it upwards, if that's how the nut tightens up, you want to basically preset the heim so that it's already tilted upwards. Otherwise you'll end up, here, I'll show you. So you see how it moves like that? If you don't do it, you could end up but sometimes if you don't do it right, basically one heim will be this way, the other heim will be this way, and there won't be any movement in this. So it actually, when you turn it, puts the chassis in a bind. So you want it to be nice and easy so that through all the motion, you can move that back and forth. Something like that. Okay, so that's basically your front end, minus the steering wheel. And then when you go to put your hubs on, the hubs, again, doesn't matter what side. You're going to take your nut off, and you'll find actually you'll have too many spacers in your kits. Should have one of each, too many, so you have one big, one small, too many. Use them as a spare if you ever lose them. And the normal setting we use is 20 millimeters before the hub. So you have your spindle, and the big spacers are 10 millimeter spacers, and small ones are 5. So I like to take one big, 2 smalls, slide my hub on, and then you're going to put your big spacer on the outside right here. And then you have your washer. Put the flat part towards the spacers.
Flat part, it's a cup.
Yeah. So if you look at it, see,
Right.
the flat part of the spacer you want towards the spacer. Flat part of the washer towards the spacer. And then put your nut on. Basically what I like to do when I'm tightening these, tighten them all the way up until these are locked down, and then start loosening the nut until you can spin your inner spacers by hand. You don't want any play left or right, but you want to be able to spin the spacers. Otherwise you'll end up burning up the bearings inside the hubs. Same one on the right side. Any questions on the front end stuff?
Is there any kind of safety clip that goes on the end of that as well?
Yeah. Loop line, same bag, safety clips. There's black snap rings,
Okay.
and they go on the outside. Anything else?
Is that a nylock nut?
Yep. Yep. It's a nylon.
What did you say for the tightness of the nut, so you don't overtighten it?
Basically, I tighten it all the way down. Okay, so it's all the way down. It doesn't want to spin. And I just simply loosen it until I can spin these by hand.
Each of the spacers?
Yeah. Until I got my fingers on spacers and I can spin those.
So if you could spin those, wouldn't the inner race of the bearing also spin on the shaft if the bearing binds?
The inner race of the bearing.
There's a bearing on this hub?
Yeah.
And the inner race is against the spindle. If that's loose, that inner race could turn on the spindle, right?
I think maybe I'm lost.
I mean, the
This
tolerance
is
Okay.
the inner race.
Yep.
If your spacer is not pressing against there, this could spin on the shaft that's in here, right?
Yes, but no.
Okay,
Well, the weight of the cart when it's on the ground, the tolerance is so tight that
okay, so it's not going to spin.
It won't spin.
Okay,
No.
so how's it?
if the bearing locks up,
Yes.
that there should be
Yeah.
less friction.
that's the whole point of the reason
on the spindle.
Okay. But he was saying if it was too tight, it would overheat.
Now you've got
I don't see where the heat's coming from.
Now you've got this force pressing both inner bearings
Yes,
against the race.
against the race. Okay, you want it centered in the race.
Start grinding up the race.
Okay,
You want those balls. It's a ball. Yeah, you want the ball.
in the center of that groove. Oh, I see.
Okay. Sorry.
It's okay.
I see his point. I mean, if you have problems tearing up spindles, it's not
Bearings are going right.
All right. So lastly, I'll show everyone a general idea of how to mount your seat. I won't mount it, but I'll show everybody how it's done. So you're going to take your seat, and you want it to snug fit or tight in between your two uprights. And if it doesn't fit, there's many ways you can make it fit. You can use spacers. Simply, I mean, here at the shop, we take a rubber mallet and just very lightly tap on this, in or out, and it'll move. But you want it to be snug. And then to get our measurements on the seat, we basically have a very general guideline. Obviously, if you're a tall person, you're going to have to move the seat back. If you're a short person, you're going to have to move the seat forward. But a standard setting, we measure from the very front of the chassis lip to the lip of the seat, and you want 620 millimeters on the left side.
From the inside of that front tube.
Yeah, so you're going to measure basically right where this floor pan tab is, to the lip of the seat. You want 620 millimeters. So it's at like 630 right now, so I'm going to move it forward. And we use this seat mounting kit, but you can use a piece of wood, anything flat that you can set the seat on. You just don't want it to be below the frame rail, otherwise it'll drag. So now I'm at 620, and you don't even measure the right side. So basically, whoever's mounting it, measure the left side, and then you just square it up in the center or in the rear. And then don't really worry about this height because you want it flat on whatever you're using. So using a 2x4, we just want it to sit flat. The seat's a flat bottom seat, so don't worry about moving this up and down. We want it sitting flat on a piece of wood or whatever, piece of steel, whatever you want to use. So for in this case, my upper measurement is 240 millimeters. It really varies on where you want to mount your seat. If you want to mount it right at the bottom, or if you want to, like in our case, we space it up a little bit, just to keep it from dragging. We use gears. You can use any sort of spacer to set the seat on when you're doing it.
That measurement that you took from the back to the axle, is that a standard measurement? I mean, should it roughly be?
Yeah, it should be anywhere from 200 to 250. Now, you don't want it to be any lower than 200 and no more than 250. So like this one. So like this one's 230. And then simply once you're square, everything's looking good. You want to drill your holes here and here. You're going to get your seat hardware kit. It's going to have black spacers in it, and then 2 shorter bolts with just metal spacers. And the shorter bolts go here and here. The spacer in between the seat and your metal tab. And then once you have those 2 drilled, you're going to go to the bottom and then use your bottom spacers for it. Make sure you don't tighten the seat up until you have all 4 bolts in and everything's done. You don't want to just drill one hole and tighten it down because then you're going to put the seat in bind. So get all 4 done, all the bolts, everything's started, and then go ahead and tighten them up.
There's spacers in there for the top and the bottom brackets? Or just
So for the top brackets, it's just the conical washer for inside and then a steel washer for in between here and here. That's why you want the seat to fit snug in there. And then for the bottom, you use the bigger spacers.
Depending on where you mount the seat, since the structure of the seat is a little bit slanted, depending on exactly how far forward or height that you have it, you may have to add a few more of the washers in between. You know, they may not be all exactly what comes to the hip.
okay.
They should be pretty close.
Other than that, that's how a seat's done. It's pretty simple and pretty straightforward.
So then you would just fit in the bottom tabs until it was snug with whatever spacer you're putting in there?
So basically the bottom tabs, well, depending on where your seat is. So obviously, you know, the further forward you move the seat, the tab might not be, you know, square with the seat.
Okay.
So wherever you want to put the seat, you might actually have to, in some instances, take a crescent wrench
Bend it up.
and just put it on the tab. You either bend it down or bend it up, and that way it's running parallel with the seat, wherever your position
Could
is.
you use the crescent wrench for the
Yep.
top ones too? Or
Yep. If those are in or out a little bit, you just stick it on, bend it. Very easy. But again, guys, the seat, very important that you do it right, because if it's not right, you could be fighting a lot of issues, and that's the cause of it without even knowing. You know, you might say, it's not working, something's wrong, and change everything else, when really it's just because the seat was installed wrong. Because really it's the center, it's the center of the chassis. So if it's not done right, you could be putting a bind on the center of the chassis just from the get-go. So you want it to be, you know, take your time on your seat. Make sure it's done right. Make sure none of the bolts have tension on it. You know, right from the start. You want them in and out of the hole real nice.
So do you want a little bit of a clearance hole then in there so you can do this? Or find holes?
You can. We don't, but you can. You know, it wouldn't hurt to go one size fit. It's really bigger.
So just so it's not in the
Yeah. I mean, we use it's 8mm bolt, and we use we use 5/16, and it's a little bit bigger than 8. So, any questions on that?
the whatever the sandpaper or whatever you have under there, that's just to bring it up from rubber?
Yeah, we just use it as a spacer.
Okay. But on that, you don't want to go super high, right? Because that would throw your
No, so basically you want to keep it within the frame rails. So don't go below the frame rail, and don't go above the frame rail.
Oh, okay.
So it should be pretty close.
The frame rail is 30mm, so you have 30mm play, basically. And really the reason we do this is because the way our seat jig is, it's actually below the frame. So this and this makes it even. So we run basically 5 mil above the frame. Anything else?
Do you ever go back and tighten up the top bolts on the
These?
rear cassettes? Yeah, these guys.
Yeah, so they're actually going to be loose.
Yeah.
When you're all done, you want to tighten them up. I did it yesterday.
That just holds the bearing in position.
Yeah, that just holds it in position so the bearing's not just moving around.
Yeah.
But yeah, these want to be tight once you're all done. I just happened to do it yesterday. And then I did it. The nuts on these yet, but just because I was mocking it up. When you guys do put this in, there's 2 nuts that come with the bolts. Yeah, I mean it's threaded, but it's just an extra safety measure. Those are the things I wanted to talk about. Any questions on anything else?
On your rear axle, you start in that middle. Is there enough play, would you ever, or is there enough play even to have one like in the middle and then the back all the way down? I mean, is
It's
there any
not
reason?
possible.
No, this has to be square in there.
Okay. The bolts won't go in.
So you'll, okay.
Now you can, and I have seen people do it on accident, go one side, one position, the other side, the other position, without noticing it. So that'll throw off things.
It'll make things handle a little weird.
Yeah. So you just
Combine
Yeah, that's true.
yeah. And the axle, because of the way the bearing is, the axle will go in that way. It's just not right. So you just want to make sure it's equal. If you're going to go the middle both sides. Anything else? Anything else on the chapter? Yeah. So I want to do it without the laser. You're going to go ahead and install your hubs on both sides. Get it all bolted on just like it was.
Just showing the tools on the.
Buy those metal plates, or is that just something you found out?
Yeah, they sell them, yeah. you do it, it doesn't really matter. Okay. So we're going to do the toe plate. The steering wheel doesn't have to be perfectly centered or anything because I'm really just measuring the front of it and the back of it. So I can do it this way, I can do it this way. So I'm getting this up. So I simply hook it on the front edge of the plate. And I'm going to read the number. So let's say it's way off. Let's say like it's back to how we started. It might be 40 millimeter, greater of a number on the front than it is the rear. So let's say it's 150. And I go to the rear. Let's say it's 110. I'm going to move each tie rod out equally to get basically, so if I 140 and 110, 30 mil difference, by lengthening it, it's going to be bringing this number down and this number out. So you've got to, you want to go basically 15 millimeter. That way this one comes in 15, this goes out 15, it closes that 30 millimeter gap. So I would spin this equal per side, so roughly 7 per side, let's say, until I get to the number I'm happy with. And then I'm going to go back over here, do the same thing, check it back on the front. So like 137, and I check it on the rear, 135. So now that I got my 2 millimeter toe out I want, now you have to check the swing. So when you check the swing on the plates, you have someone hold the tire or the tape measure on the kingpin, and you're gonna. So like if I take this, watch this wheel. It goes, and then it comes back. So you want to hold it on here, and you want to move it until it starts going backwards. And you want to remember that number. 835. So you want this side? Have someone hold it. Take your steering wheel, turn it. 8. Well, this one we already did, but 835. And again, let's say it's off. Now you're gonna basically have to reset it. So let's say it was 820. I would take this tie rod and spin it out until it was close to 830. Go to the other side until I got my swing right again. And then I might have to adjust this side. Basically, you want to get your swing set. Like when you do it with the plates, you almost want to set your swing first. Get the toe close, set your swing so it's equal per side, and then go back to the toe. Because if I change my swing, it's going to change my toe. Because doing it this way, I didn't necessarily do it the same amount. So now my toe might be off a couple millimeter, but I'm a lot closer. I'm not 30 millimeter now. I might only be 5. So then you fine tune it, get your toe right, and go back and check your swing again. But definitely no problem to do it this way, but for us it just takes more time. It's, good news, it's one of those things that once you set it, unless you bend something or want to change something, you won't have to mess with it much. So it's a tedious work at the beginning, but once you get the hang of it, it's easy, and B, once you set it the first time, it's a lot easier to make small changes because everything's basically done already.
The holes and flat part on the plate necessary.
No, we just use them to hook the. If you're doing it by yourself, you can basically just use it to hook the tape measure into.
What should I do for the flat part?
The flat part is used if you want to measure your camber. Makes it a lot easier. So you can just hook it on that, measure your camber, spin it around, measure the bottom side, see if you got positive or negative camber. And again, doing it this way achieves the same goal. Make sure your steering's the same and your toe's good. Anything else on this? Any other questions regarding anything else on the chassis I haven't touched base? No? Anybody? That's my portion of it. I think we're gonna go back to Senior and he'll talk some more about some other stuff.
Everyone will have a real seat. That only took an hour. Yeah, what hour?